Lock on. Hey, this is Brian, and this is the Organization of Transparency and Merit.
And I'm
And
Joe,
Joe.
and yes, we are here to discuss all things transparency and merit. What do you have today?
Well, I wanted to kind of delve into the ego victim philosophy. And maybe I'm off on a tangent here, but there are a lot of people who get their ego from being a victim. And and this is whether they are and I think particularly identity politics plays a big role in the ego victim, what I call the ego victim phenomenon. Have you ever run across a person who believes they're a victim and they kind of get their ego from being a victim, Joe?
It's happened, absolutely. I wish I had that name to have called them, in fact.
Yes. Yeah. And it seems
It's
like
happened to me at work.
the yeah, it does seem like the ego victims are getting they have it seems like they have a very powerful voice. They have their voices have so much power that they are able to silence opposing views and opinions, the voice of the ego victim. And I don't know why this is. I don't know what the motivation is for those in power to, what the motivation is to those in power who basically support and give in to these ego victims. You know, and that's one of the curious things to me with the Organization of Transparency and Merit. What is behind, or what is the motivating factor behind people supporting what I consider to be the civil rights industrial complex, and what is behind, like, what is the motivating factor to why people want to shut down freedom of speech and pushing back on the what I consider to be the ego victims? Do you have any logical reason to why social media is giving in to a lot of these people's demands?
Well, the right now it seems like shows, your typical show nowadays isn't focused on just one aspect of a person's personality. It's got to tug on every different emotion possible. Some of these people are truly damaged by putting so much belief into what they see and read. I'm sorry to say it, but I think they follow a narrative and hop on that narrative, and they won't let go if they think they have a firm grip on a aspect of the narrative that fits modern day. And it's for me. I'm been around a minute. I'm not a kid anymore, and so when I see this, it's, I hate being the old late 40s, midlifer guy, but it's kind of a thing right now. People are taking it on. They're taking on too many different emotions, and they're also trying to specialize too.
You know what, though? There was a large pushback against the ego victim culture, the SJW culture, and then all of a sudden, the SJWs. It seemed like the SJWs told the parents, or the principal at the social media companies, and then all of a sudden, now voices are getting shut down, and free speech is being curtailed, and yeah, it's really it really kind of baffles me. But I think that there are layers upon layers of organizations that didn't like what was going on, and they saw their ego and their movement, because I think there's a lot of people who's not only money but also their ego is involved in a lot of these ideals and stuff, and so they didn't like what was going on and they didn't like the pushback. So they invented things like hate speech, white supremacy, these kind of code words, and they began to really push back on social media. And not only the social media companies, but the Fortune 500 companies also began to push back particularly on YouTube. And every one of all of these companies have diversity programs, and what happened with these Fortune 500 companies is, I think the heads of these diversity programs began to say, "Hey, wait a minute, these people are exposing us. They are saying things that are completely different than what we're preaching, and we have to shut this down." And it's basically like, it seems like it's the church. It's almost like the SJW church or the synagogue or whatever. They're the big church, and they can't have any other dogma or doctrine being spoken. So and they put on and I'm assuming that they have some forms of manipulative powers, and they've metastasized themselves so much with these companies that rebelling against them, inside is very difficult. It's kind of like they kind of own portions of the house, and a divorce would be very costly. So in some ways, it's easier to go along with them than it is to rebel and fight them, to say, hey, we're going to be a place of freedom, and we're going to respect the consumer. Like we're going to let the battle of ideas go forth. YouTube, Facebook, and all these places are going to be a place of ideas. These large companies can't do that. They cannot. They cannot. Kind of go their own way and allow the flourishing of ideas to go forth. And that's kind of sad. And it's kind of sad, not only what's happened in America, but what has happened all over the world. And yeah, I'm not hearing,
Yes.
Joe, I'm not hearing you right now. So are you?
Well, I was waiting for you to make your punchline there.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I haven't concluded on that. I just wanted to say that it's kind of sad, and I don't know exactly, how to successfully, battle against, and how to have, and I don't know if we can get a place like YouTube and like Twitter where we can discuss and have ideas.
I think your best bet is to take a look at Tavistock and take a look at the organizational leaders that are involved in an organization such as Tavistock, and you're going to see that some of the players, if not all of them, that are using the same kind of dialogue and pushing the same agendas that you are considering here.
Mm-hmm.
I think you'd be fascinated. I've taken a quick look, and there are some major players from so many organizations. And if you know and understand what it is that Tavistock pushes, I think you'll see. You'd be surprised where you'd end up. But I think you need to find it on your own and take a look.
Yeah. I also think just as much of of money that's involved. I mean, there's ego people involved, and there's
Yes.
fanaticism
Yes.
that is involved, and the fanatics are basically running the show, and the money changers, the money makers, they don't have any ego, or they even know to a degree that yeah, it's kind of true. What your statistics that you point out are true, but hey, we don't want to rock the boat. And these people are fanatical. Like, for example, if we had an open dialogue and it was large enough about certain subjects, there are fanatics out there, particularly Antifa and other groups that would get violent, and they make robocalls and and do lots of other things, and they've been able to use the internet to stop free speech, while at the same time people cannot use the internet to even defend themselves against um, you know, against being stigmatized, and again and promoting their event because it will be stopped by violence. And, and that's where we're at right now. I don't know. I have ideas on how this situation can improve, but there are some drastic things that I think may have to happen in order for the First Amendment and this to really be the information age, because we're seeing a lot of censorship in this so-called information age. And the information age, there seems to be information that you can't hear in the information age.
Yep. And a lot of that narrative is controlled by big organizations such as Tavistock.
Yeah.
Every way I look
Yeah.
at this, I always end up there because of the social engineering aspect of this, the component that shows a clever kind of manipulation of human nature and what to trust. And it's very Big Brotherish when you start to look at it, but the sides have been chosen, and that there is a real struggle, I think, because there are people that fall onto the different sides.
And and then and basically what I'm saying is there are groups of fanatics who, like I said, they are controlling, and there are the fanatics. There are people who there are people there are three types of people, I think, on average. People who believe the lies, people who see through the lies, and the majority who are afraid of those who believe the lie. Those who, because many of those who believe the lie are absolutely fanatical, and they're vindictive, they're cruel, and they're mean, and they're nasty, and that's what I'm seeing. And I could be, like I said, I often say that I could be wrong on this. This may not be the case, but that is what I am observing.
Very good.
Yep. Well, I think that'll do it. Unless you have anything else to add. I mean, I want to say like, share, and subscribe if you're hearing this on YouTube as well. Like, share, and subscribe. We want to get people's opinions and people's perspectives on these topics.
Like, share, subscribe, and go to our website, transparencyandmerit.com.
Yes, sir.